He had been living on the streets for more than a decade, a man everyone believed was just another homeless person struggling to survive. But what if I told you the truth was far more complicated? What if he wasn't homeless at all? What if he was hiding? Not just from the world, but from something much darker and more powerful than anyone could imagine. This is the story of a man whose life was shattered, buried beneath years of pain and silence, until one day, everything changed with the click of a button. For 12 long years, he blended into the background, a forgotten figure on cold city sidewalks. People passed him by without a second thought, a face in the crowd no one stopped to recognize. Yet beneath the worn clothes and tired eyes, there was a secret waiting to be uncovered. A secret so shocking that when someone finally Googled his name, the reaction wasn't just surprise, it was a scream. The kind of scream that comes from realizing you've been wrong about someone all along. This wasn't just a man down on his luck. This was a hidden genius, a man with a story that would shake the very foundation of what we think we know about identity and justice. What he had been running from, and why, is a mystery that slowly unfolds through this story. It's a story about redemption and the powerful truth that can't stay buried forever. How does a person go from having everything to losing it all? And what does it take to find yourself again when the world has already written you off? These are the questions that drive this journey. This isn't just a tale of survival, it's a story about the fight to reclaim who you are when the world has tried to erase you. As you listen, you'll meet the people who crossed his path, some who saw a man broken, others who saw a man worth fighting for. You'll feel the weight of his silence, the fear that kept him hidden, and the hope that refused to die. This story challenges us to look beyond the surface, to ask what lies beneath the label, and to remember that sometimes, the greatest truths come from the most unexpected places. So, why did someone scream when they found out who he really was? What powerful force was he hiding from? And how did a simple search on the internet lead to a moment that changed everything? The answers are coming, but not yet. What I can promise is that this story will take you through heartbreak, mystery, and a remarkable journey of justice and identity that you won't forget. Stay with me, because the moment we uncover the truth, everything will change. For years, he lived quietly, keeping to himself in the shadows of the city. Few knew his real name, and fewer still understood the story behind it. To most, he was just another face lost in the crowd, a man worn down by life's harshest blows. But beneath that worn exterior was a life that couldn't be explained by simple misfortune. Something far more complicated had brought him here, and every detail of his past was a piece of a puzzle that no one had been brave enough to solve. People asked why he never tried to reach out for help, why he kept so hidden. But the truth was, he was running. Running from memories that haunted him, from people who wanted to silence him, and from a world that had once turned its back on him. His story wasn't about failure, it was about survival in the face of a storm most of us could never imagine. And survival, as he knew it, meant disappearing completely. What made his story so unbelievable was not just where he ended up, but where he started. Before the years of homelessness, he was someone the world respected, a man whose intelligence and achievements had once made headlines. He had built a life filled with promise and potential. People admired his work and trusted his word. But that life had crumbled in ways no one saw coming. And when it did, he vanished, erased himself from the places and people who knew him best. No one who met him on the streets would guess that beneath the ragged clothes was a mind that had once been brilliant beyond measure. They didn't know he had once worked in fields that demanded genius, solving problems that even experts struggled to understand. They didn't know that the man they saw had been forced to give up everything to protect not only himself but also those he cared about. It was a secret he carried with him, a burden heavier than any hardship the streets could offer. The people who finally Googled his name weren't expecting what they found. They stumbled on stories, articles, and documents, proof of a life far removed from the one he appeared to live. Suddenly, the homeless man they thought they knew was someone entirely different. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight, and whose disappearance had left questions that had never been answered. Questions about why he had left it all behind, and what had driven him into hiding for so long. Behind every secret is a reason, and behind his was a deep and powerful conflict, one that involved justice, betrayal, and the fight for truth. He had crossed paths with forces that were bigger than him, and those forces had changed the course of his life forever. What he had uncovered before disappearing was dangerous, and it put him in a position where hiding wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting something much greater. Something worth risking everything for. As this story unfolds, you'll see how the man's past and present collide in ways that reveal not only his genius but also the strength it took to face the impossible. You'll meet the few people who never gave up on him, the friends who saw beyond the surface, and the enemies who still linger in the shadows. Their stories all connect, building a web of mystery and tension that keeps pulling the truth just out of reach. This isn't just a story about someone who lost everything. It's about the power of identity, the fight for justice, and the human spirit's incredible ability to endure even when hope feels out of reach. And as we get closer to the truth, one thing becomes clear: sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones we never expect. So, what really happened to this man? Why did he disappear for so long, and what secret was worth losing it all? The answers are hidden in the shadows of his past, waiting to be uncovered. And when they come to light, they will change everything you thought you knew about who he was, and who he could become. The story is far from over, and the mystery is only just beginning. The deeper you dig into his story, the more tangled it becomes. It's not just about one man's fall or survival, it's about a collision between power, betrayal, and a truth so explosive that many wanted it buried forever. The man at the center of this mystery wasn't just hiding from the streets or his past mistakes. He was hiding from people who would stop at nothing to keep him silent. People who had once trusted him but turned their backs when he became a threat. Before he disappeared, he had been working on something big. Something that, if revealed, could change the course of many lives, including his own. His knowledge and discoveries had put him at odds with some very dangerous individuals, those with influence and resources far beyond what most could imagine. And once you cross those kinds of people, disappearing isn't just an option, it's a necessity. But even in hiding, the past has a way of catching up. There are whispers among those who knew him, stories of secret meetings, coded messages, and warnings that never came in the daylight. Some say he was close to exposing corruption that reached higher than anyone wanted to admit. Others believe he held the key to a hidden truth that powerful people feared would destroy their carefully built worlds. What's clear is that his life was never just his own, and his decisions affected more people than he ever intended. Among the subplots weaving through his story is the role of the few loyal souls who refused to give up on him. Friends from his old life who never stopped searching, piecing together clues when everyone else had moved on. Some risked everything to try and find him, driven by a mix of guilt, hope, and the belief that justice demanded his voice be heard. Their stories add layers to the mystery, showing us that even in the darkest moments, human connection can be a lifeline. There's also the perspective of those who judged him without knowing the whole story. People who saw only the surface, a homeless man, a stranger to be ignored or feared, unaware of the genius and pain beneath. Their reactions remind us how easy it is to miss the truth when we only look at appearances. It raises uncomfortable questions about identity and how society treats those who fall through the cracks. At the heart of it all is the question of justice. What it means, who deserves it, and how far someone will go to claim it. His disappearance wasn't just about hiding, it was about fighting an invisible battle. A battle that no court could decide, and no headline could capture. It was a struggle against an unfair system, a fight to protect his own life while trying to expose a deeper wrong. And the tension only grows as the pieces start to come together. The moment someone Googled his name, the quiet world he had built was shattered. That scream, the one that echoed through the room, was the sound of a secret being pulled into the light. But what happens next? Who will stand with him? Who will try to silence him again? And can the truth survive once it's out? This story is not just about uncovering a hidden identity, it's about facing the shadows that come with it. It's about the cost of secrets and the courage it takes to confront them. As we move forward, the conflict deepens, and the stakes get higher. The journey ahead is uncertain, filled with danger and unexpected allies. And the question remains, when the world finally sees who he really is, will it be ready for the truth? The moment the world started to close in on him was sudden but inevitable. After years of hiding, the fragile safety he had carved out began to crumble piece by piece. The simple act of someone searching his name online wasn't just a discovery, it was a trigger that set off a chain reaction he had long feared. Suddenly, the shadows that had protected him were filled with whispers, questions, and eyes watching his every move. He knew that those powerful forces who had forced him into hiding were now fully aware he was no longer invisible. The danger was no longer abstract, it was real and immediate. Every step outside his quiet existence risked exposure. Every conversation, every glance, held the possibility of betrayal. The tension around him grew thick, like the silence before a storm that everyone can feel but no one can stop. Those loyal friends who never stopped searching began to close in, but even their support came with risks. Some warned him to disappear further, to vanish deeper into the unknown. Others believed it was time to fight back, to reveal the truth no matter the cost. But how do you battle shadows that have been chasing you for years? How do you reclaim a life stolen by fear and secrecy? Meanwhile, the people who had once judged him without understanding started to see cracks in the story they thought they knew. Doubt crept in, and with it, a growing desire to uncover the truth. What had seemed like a simple story of homelessness turned into something far more complex, a web of lies, power struggles, and hidden genius. The world was watching, waiting for answers that were still just out of reach. Every moment became a delicate balance between hope and danger. He moved carefully, knowing that one wrong move could shatter everything. The streets that had once been his refuge now felt like a trap, a place where the past could catch him at any moment. His mind raced with memories of what he had lost, the betrayals that pushed him away, and the justice he still longed for. And then there were the threats, subtle at first, shadows at his door, messages meant to warn or intimidate. They grew bolder, making it clear that those chasing him were closing the distance. The stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer just about hiding. It was about survival and the fight to reclaim a life stolen by lies. The tension reached a breaking point when unexpected allies emerged from the darkness, people from his past who had their own reasons to stand with him. Together, they began to piece together the final parts of a puzzle that could expose everything. But with every step closer to the truth, the danger grew. The powerful forces trying to keep him silent were ruthless, and they would do whatever it took to stop him. As the story hurtles toward its climax, the question isn't just whether the truth will come out, it's whether he will survive long enough to tell it. The weight of identity, justice, and redemption presses down harder with every passing moment. The quiet man no one noticed has become the center of a storm that could change everything. And now, standing on the edge of revelation, the only thing left to ask is, when the final curtain falls, who will stand in the light with him, and who will be left behind in the darkness? Just when it seemed like the pieces were finally coming together, something happened that no one saw coming, a twist that flipped everything on its head and pushed the story into even darker territory. The man who had spent years hiding, who had almost begun to trust the small circle of people fighting alongside him, discovered that not all allies were what they seemed. A secret betrayal emerged from within his closest group, shaking the fragile foundation of hope he had started to build. This betrayal wasn't just a personal blow. It was a calculated move by those who wanted to keep the truth locked away forever. Someone had been feeding information to the very forces hunting him, someone who had pretended to stand by his side. The realization hit like a thunderclap: the enemy wasn't just outside the circle, it was inside, closer than he ever expected. Suddenly, the line between friend and foe blurred, and every conversation became a gamble. The stakes had never been higher. Now, not only was his life on the line, but so was the mission to bring justice and expose the hidden truths that had cost him so much. This new twist forced him to question everything: his past, his present, and even his own judgment. How do you trust again when trust itself could be a weapon? How do you fight for justice when betrayal lurks in every shadow? The pressure was relentless. As he navigated this dangerous maze, the powerful forces he was running from tightened their grip. They seemed to anticipate every move, as if they had eyes everywhere. It became clear that his hidden identity wasn't just a secret to protect, it was a key to something much bigger. Something so valuable that it had people willing to destroy anyone who got too close. Amidst this growing tension, another revelation surfaced. Pieces of his past that he thought were long buried started to resurface, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed silence he had maintained for so long. Secrets about his family, his work, and the very reason he disappeared began to emerge, complicating the battle between hiding and fighting. Each new detail added weight to the story, reminding everyone just how much was at stake. At this point, the world watching his story unfold was on edge. The man who once seemed broken and lost had become a symbol of hidden genius and resilience. But with betrayal cutting deep and danger closing in, the question wasn't just about uncovering his identity anymore. It was about whether the truth could survive the storm of deception and violence surrounding it. The tension built with every passing moment, every whisper of betrayal, and every shadow that moved closer. The fight for justice was no longer a distant hope, it was a fierce battle raging in the darkest corners of a world few understood. And as the climax drew nearer, one thing was certain: the cost of truth would be greater than anyone expected, and the journey toward redemption was far from over. The moment of truth came suddenly, crashing into his world like a wave he could no longer dodge. The tangled web of secrets, betrayals, and hidden forces that had shadowed his life for 12 long years was finally unraveling. With the help of the few loyal allies who had stayed true, he faced the powerful people who had forced him into hiding, not with fear, but with the fierce determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. In a tense confrontation that felt like the turning point of everything, the truth began to spill out. Documents that exposed corruption, conversations that revealed lies, and evidence of the dangerous game played behind closed doors all came to light. His hidden genius, once buried beneath years of silence and pain, was finally recognized as the key to bringing justice where it had long been denied. The world that had forgotten him was forced to listen. The justice he fought for wasn't just personal, it was a victory for everyone who had been silenced, ignored, or pushed aside. His identity, once hidden in the shadows, became a symbol of resilience and redemption. But even as the courtroom filled with shock and disbelief, and the powerful were held accountable, the tension didn't fully ease. Because just when it seemed the story had reached its end, there was one more surprise waiting in the wings. As the final pieces settled, a new revelation came to light. One that no one expected. The betrayal he had suffered wasn't random or just a cruel twist of fate. It was part of something much bigger. The person who had betrayed him wasn't just an insider, they were someone he had trusted most, someone whose motives were deeper and more complicated than anyone had guessed. This twist shook everything again, forcing everyone to question what they thought they knew about loyalty, justice, and truth. Yet, in that moment, something changed in him too. The man who had hidden for years, who had been hunted and betrayed, stood stronger than ever. The unexpected twist didn't break him, it sharpened his resolve. Because the fight for justice, for identity, and for redemption wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And as the story closes on this chapter, the message is clear: sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not just against the world outside, but against the shadows within. The truth has a way of coming out, but it always demands courage, sacrifice, and the strength to face the unexpected. This is a story of hidden genius, of survival, and of a justice that, once awakened, can't be silenced again. In the days that followed the shocking revelations, the man who had once been lost to the streets began to reclaim his life in ways no one had thought possible. The hidden genius behind years of silence wasn't just a name on a page anymore, he was a symbol of resilience and hope for many who had faced their own struggles. Though the road to redemption was long and far from easy, the truth had set something powerful in motion, a force that could no longer be ignored. The betrayal that cut so deep had shaken him, but it also forced him to look closer at the people around him. Some friendships survived the test of deception, growing stronger in the light of truth. Others fell away, victims of the complicated web of lies and fear. Yet through it all, he found an unexpected strength in forgiveness and understanding. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but learning from it, about the price of justice and the value of trust. Questions that once seemed impossible to answer finally found clarity. The reason he disappeared wasn't just to protect himself, it was to shield those he loved from harm. The dangerous secrets he uncovered were part of a greater fight for fairness and truth in a world often ruled by power and greed. His years on the streets were not a failure, but a chapter of survival that shaped the man he was becoming. His story wasn't just about homelessness or hiding. It was about the courage it takes to face life's hardest battles and come out standing. The people who had judged him too quickly learned an important lesson about the dangers of assumptions. His journey reminded everyone that beneath every face is a story worth hearing, a truth worth understanding. Identity isn't just about where you've been or what you've lost, it's about who you choose to be, even when the world seems against you. As the legal battles unfolded and justice began to take shape, the ripple effects reached far beyond the courtroom. His courage inspired others to speak out, to fight against the injustices they faced quietly. The truth he brought to light didn't just change his life, it challenged the system itself, pushing for a future where hidden voices could finally be heard. Though the story has come to an end here, the impact is ongoing. He continues to rebuild his life, surrounded by those who believe in redemption and second chances. The scars of the past remain, but they no longer define him. Instead, they serve as reminders of the strength found in resilience, the power of truth, and the unbreakable human spirit. For anyone watching this story, the takeaway is clear: never judge a book by its cover. Behind every struggle is a hidden story, a genius waiting to be recognized, and a fight for justice that deserves respect. This man's journey shows us that identity is complicated, redemption is possible, and even in the darkest times, hope can shine through. Thank you for joining this story of hidden identity, redemption, and emotional strength. If you found this story inspiring, please share it with others who might need to hear this message. And remember, every life has value, every truth deserves to be told, and sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones we never expect.